to turn it all upside down. Hi, everybody. I'm Dagan McDowell, and this is Bulls and Bears. The Bulls and Bears this week: Gary B. Smith, Jonas Max Ferris, John Layfield, along with Lee Carter and Nomiki Konst. Welcome to everybody. John, is the Federal Reserve with an interest rate hike maybe this month going to wreck it all?
I think they certainly could. You've got to understand that even if the Fed goes to their target rate of just under 3% in 2018, we're at historic low rates. But the market is up right now on the perception of a business-friendly administration and specifically on tax cuts and regulation reform that have been promised. Now, if you have a rising rate environment, that generally hurts stocks. And if you have that lag time, the market can't go up forever. We're in the second largest, longest bull market ever. And at some point, I think if the Fed raises rates before we see the either application of tax cuts or a defined plan that when we're going to get those tax cuts, I think we could be in for a rough patch.
Will interest rate hikes, Jonas, wipe away any potential future benefit of those tax cuts?
There's a lot of risk in raising rates because, first of all, the Federal Reserve's in a really tough situation. They're basically timing what's going on in the Trump administration, and we don't know exactly when we're going to get the tax cuts, the regulation cuts that are going to offset the drag of higher rates. I mean, the reason we're going to get out of a 0% Obama economy is because there's going to be higher inflation, there's going to be more optimism. That has to be there when they raise rates, or it's going to come crashing down and cause a recession, because that's what would happen if we didn't have an optimistic mood, if these policies don't pass. Now, some of that is just psychological, and that can be there even without the tax cuts for a while. But this timing game is very difficult, and if rates go too high, then you have other problems, like the interest on the debt becomes much more expensive, and that on top of, say, raising the defense budget is going to be a real budget buster.
But Gary B., the Federal Reserve did hike rates in December, and what did the market do? It kept soaring and hitting new record after record after record into the new year.
Exactly, Dagan. Let me go back on a couple points, and I'll double back to that. Number one, John is right. The market can't go up forever, although I hope it goes up just in our lifetimes, just straight up. That would be very nice.
I do, too.
Number two, Jonas is absolutely right. He's getting to the point of this whole fallacy of we got these super smart people behind the curtain like Wizard of Oz, pulling on the cords, hoping to manipulate the economy. It's absolutely idiotic. Remember, this is a Fed that has called 7 of the last 3 recessions. It totally missed the housing crisis. It keeps saying we're going to get 3% growth when we've been at 1.5% growth. So I think the Fed, they're better off putting into a IBM Deep Blue computer and letting them run the interest rates. Finally, back to your point. Is there a correlation between interest rates and really anything? I looked at a correlation between interest rates and housing, interest rates and GDP, interest rates and employment. There is none. Interest rates at best follow the economy on upwards. I hope it's the case in this time around. But look, it's going to be a quarter-point increase. As you point out, Dagan, it has no effect on the market. I don't think it's going to have almost any effect on the average American.
How about, Lee, it actually having a positive impact? Optimism is up. When people feel better, they can actually lift the economy. And if they see rates going up, that could, again, reinforce that feeling. And by the way, what about savers? Giving them a little bit of a break in the money that they're socking away.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to be that bad of a thing. You're talking to folks, I think a lot of people are expecting it to happen already. I think they're not going to expect it just to happen once. I think people are expecting it to happen a few times this year. So if it does happen, I don't think we're going to see a huge impact on the market. I'll tell you what I think is going to have a huge impact on the market is if come August there's no tax reform. But I think this is expected, and it could be, for, as you say, for savers and millennials right now who are doing a good job of saving are going to like to save more when they have better interest rates.
Naomi, would a Fed interest rate hike wipe away any benefit of these very pro-growth, positive Trump policies that are on deck?
Possibly. I think it's a gamble, and that's what Janet Yellen has said. This is all dependent, and this is what she has said, on the investment in infrastructure, bringing the jobs back to America, which is reliant on a sustainable infrastructure that Donald Trump has proposed. Now, if that happens, then that's good for the middle class. If it doesn't happen, this is only going to benefit Wall Street, who has been driving up the economy. Because the reality is there is a shrinking middle class, and if this doesn't work, it hurts them.
And Gary B., doesn't Janet Yellen have to worry about keeping her job, assuming she wants to stay her terms up in January of next year?
It certainly puts her in a very precarious position. Look, these people are human. They want to please the president, whoever it is. There is no doubt that Yellen and Trump are at odds, have been at odds. I think in this case, she can slip in that quarter-point rate hike without Trump going ballistic. Any more after that, then she better be looking for another teaching job, because Donald Trump's not going to like that. And when her term is up, I don't think she'll be staying on.
John, to that point that Gary B pointed this out, the Federal Reserve is very hesitant. At the beginning of not this year, but last year, they were calling for 4 interest rate hikes. We've gotten 2 in 2 years. We got 1 interest rate hike last year. They're calling for 3 right now. It's probably going to be a lot less than that.
Yeah, I completely agree with what's been said with Gary B, that they are politically motivated. Look, they had a chance to raise rates 18 months to 24 months ago, and they missed that window of opportunity. They missed it, I think, for political reasons. They also helped create the bubble of housing. You look at what interest rates can do to potentially to the market. I don't think the interest rates alone are going to be the thing that hurts, because you look at 2004, when last time you saw interest rates rise significantly. First 2 months, the market was down. Then over the next 24 months, the market was up 35%. So it's not interest rates alone. It's the promise that we have of a tax reform bill, specifically a corporate tax cut. If we get interest rates rising, I think the market will use that as an excuse to either pause or either pull back if we don't have that corporate tax reform.
And Janet Yellen and the Federal Reserve, Jonas, they don't really believe in the Trump policies, in everything that he has laid out. When they adjusted their growth targets at the end of the year, they factored in no impact from all of these Trump ideas, even after the market had been rallying.
First, actually, if you read minutes going way back, they've wanted fiscal policy for many, many years. They don't want to do it all with 0% interest rates. That was because there wasn't cohesion in government where they could do a large, whether it's a tax cut or a fiscal spend. There wasn't enough going on the fiscal side. They had to make up for it on the monetary side with interest rates. So broadly speaking, they're psyched that there is a Trump policy. Whether they like Trump or not is another story. As far as the original point, you don't want to be Federal Reserve person forever. If you get fired, the real money is after being Federal Reserve. You don't get paid to be on the Federal Reserve a lot. You get paid a lot after. You don't want to have an Alan Greenspan-like term. You want to have Trump fire you, then go on 18 boards and write books. That's how you make a lot of money.
On the backs of the middle class.
Yeah, exactly, Lee. But speak to that. When it, Lee, final word to you, the impact of what the Federal Reserve does on the psyche of the American people. How much do they watch it? Or, as Jonas pointed out, the Federal Reserve seems to be on board with President Trump.
Look, I think it can go 2 ways. I think there's also this idea that people have been propping up, that this has been propping up the economy, and once they are able to raise rates, it means that the economy is actually able to go on its own. And I think that's what a lot of American people believe. So if they see rates coming up, they might actually believe, hey, we're actually in good shape. And so I think it could be a good message.
And just one more thing, and they'll get off their duffs and maybe go out there and buy the home that they've been shopping for if they're worried about interest rates heading higher. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys. Cavuto on Business about 20 minutes from now. Neil, what have you got?
Hey, Dagan. Well, first it was cabinet holdups. Now are leaks threatening to hold up President Trump's agenda on tax cuts and health care. Plus, his new mandate for immigrants coming in that could help taxpayers out. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Neil. We can't wait. But up here first, House Republicans busy working on their bill to repeal and replace Obamacare. But there's just one little problem. The public hasn't seen it, leaving some lawmakers like Senator Rand Paul banging on doors to find it. Someone here asking if we're about to hear this again.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Fox News Alert, good morning. I'm Leland Vittert in Washington. President Trump making a startling claim this morning, accusing former President Obama of wiretapping him during the campaign. But so far, Mr. Trump has offered no evidence. The tweet coming this morning, terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. Former Obama aide Ben Rhodes saying no president could order surveillance without a warrant. More on this as it develops. Also making news this morning, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has agreed to submit amended testimony on his contact with Russian officials during the campaign. That testimony is going to be in writing, despite Democrats urging that he appear in person. More on this throughout the morning as it develops. I'm Leland Vittert in Washington. Now back to Bulls and Bears.
Democrats and at least one Republican searching for the GOP Obamacare replacement bill this week and slamming Republicans for not making it public. Sound familiar? Back in 2009, Republicans accused Democrats of doing the exact same thing while drafting the Affordable Care Act behind closed doors. Gary B., the healthcare sector makes up about 1/6 of the entire U.S. economy, so it is important to know what is in this bill.
Well, exactly. Look, you alluded to the hypocrisy. This is probably why, Dagan, congressional approval ratings are in, the single digits at best. I mean, it's just horrible. Look, the Republicans on their side, I can understand the hypocrisy from the Democrats. They didn't reveal the bill until it was voted upon. But on the flip side, the GOP has had 8 years to get together a bill, for crying out loud. Look, I'm not even sure, in fact, I am sure, government should be involved in health care, for crying out loud. It should be a free market thing, just like you can go buy plastic surgery on the free market or auto insurance on the free market. There's many models out there, whether you like the Swedish model, the Canadian model, the Hong Kong model, Obamacare, for all its faults. But the fact is they didn't have something ready to go, and honestly, it's making the GOP look silly. I think in this case, Rand Paul is probably right.
Although Rand Paul, what's he going to do? Leave fax the health care bill to everybody with that copper he was pulling on a wagon?
Yeah.
But Lee, is there hypocrisy here, though, by the Republicans drafting this bill?
I mean, you could say yes, but I could also argue no, because the bottom line is this: they don't have a bill yet. Nobody's voting on the bill yet. We don't need to see the sausage making happen, but we should see the sausage before we vote on whether or not we're going to eat it. But I just think that the whole thing is a little bit premature. Now, I totally agree. They've had 8 years to figure this out. The fact that we do not have an alternative to Obamacare in place already is ridiculous, but it doesn't make them hypocritical for not showing it at this point when they're still hashing it out.
And the Republicans, John, promised that they will reveal it once it is written, and it's still in the process.
Yeah, look, I agree with Gary B. I'm not sure this makes them hypocritical. I think it makes them awful. We elect the tallest leprechaun when we go to the polls. You may agree one side, Republican or Democrat, ideologically with one party more than the other, but you're still electing a politician, and these guys are horrible. The Democrats passed a bill they hadn't even read. They did insurance reform instead of health care reform. Why do the Republicans not have a corporate tax bill on the president's desk right now? Why do they not have a health care bill on the president's desk right now? It's because they're politicians. They're waving their little balloons in the air, taking polls. It's what politicians do. It's why they have such a low approval rating, and their only goal in life is to get reelected because they couldn't make it in the free world.
And I should correct Gary B. I don't think it's in the single digits, but it's a little, I think it creeps into the double digits.
I was being a little quote-unquote liberal with my numbers.
But Jonas, the Republicans have no choice. They promised, and President Trump promised repeal and replace, and that's what they got to get done.
Okay, do I have to stand up for the Republican congressman?
Yes, you do.
First of all, to run off the sausage example, you don't want to see how a hot dog is made. You just want it to taste good. And they make a lot of hot dogs in Washington, D.C., and there's no bigger one than health care. And believe me, this is something that is going to scare a lot of people. And that is because, look, they don't have a bill because they didn't think they were going to win and have the power to really do anything. It was all just a game until now. The problem with this plan is the Obamacare plan makes the healthy, wealthy, and wise pay for less high-income people, and unhealthy people have more health care. That deliverable has to change, or you can't fix it in a Republican conservative environment. The deliverable needs to be lower health care costs and healthier people. You got to take that Obamacare deliverable out, because that is only achievable through tax increases if you don't have healthy and wealthy people pay for it. And that's what they're doing. They can't let us see what's going on, and we shouldn't want to see it because it's going to make you nauseous.
And Nomi, one of the things that's facing headwinds among conservatives is the idea that you cap the tax benefit you get if you get your insurance through your employer. That impacts about 180 million people. potentially.
Yeah, listen, I was a single-payer advocate, still am a single-payer advocate, still believe that you can improve.
Medicare's not going broke in 11 years.
Well, Medicare, this is about putting your resources in the right places. And maybe instead of putting $54 billion into the defense budget, which is already the largest ever, we should put it into the American people and make sure that they're healthy. But I digress. I think this is a political thing. The problem is that Republicans don't agree with each other. Because Republicans coming from states like Kentucky, states like Arkansas, happen to have the highest enrollment for Obamacare. And they're showing up at their town halls, seeing hundreds of people in the resistance fighting back, many of which voted for these Republicans. And that's what they have to look out for. They're not actually looking at those polls that Gary says that they, as politicians, should be.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I agree with you, Naomi, because some of the resistance among Republicans is they want that Medicaid expansion. They accepted it, and they want to keep it. And so, again, another stumbling block. Thanks, everybody. Coming up next, President Trump doubling down on his push for school choice and school vouchers. Teachers' unions say don't do it. Someone here says we can't afford not to do it. We debate it. Next.
Tax cuts, regulatory reform, and affordable health care.
That's what the president campaigned on. That's what he wanted.
President Trump visiting a Catholic school in Florida yesterday, promoting school choice and school vouchers. Gary B., you think that the president has the right idea?
Absolutely. It's really a case of free market versus government sponsored education. And look, the government just spent $7 billion on their school improvement mandate or program. The results back, no improvement in scores. Even the education department admitted $7 billion wasted. Do vouchers work? My gosh, they work, of course. Look at when parents have a choice. Look at St. Benedict's School in Newark, New Jersey, one of the worst parts of Newark, New Jersey. 98% of the kids go to college there. No government funding at all. It's all charitable and tuition. Vouchers work. They even work in D.C., for crying out loud. Why can't we give parents the choice and let them spend their own money as they see fit?
John, yes to school choice?
Absolutely. Look, there's some great schools out there, and there are some great teachers, but spending on schools has soared over the last 20 years, and our ranking worldwide has plummeted in America. I spent most of my life working with at-risk kids and educations, and these kids that are in inner cities specifically, they don't have a choice. They don't have a vote, and for the most part, they have awful schools. There are exceptions. You've got to give them at least a choice, and at least vouchers do that.
Jonas?
I don't see how taking some students out of a bad school and leaving some there is going to help the kids still stuck there. It might help the kids who make the move to the private school with the subsidy. But let's talk about the financial implication of it. Isn't this what happened with college tuition and why it grows faster than anything else? Like, if you subsidize it, it's going to create demand for it with government money. It's not your money, partially, and that's going to boost the tuition for private schools and secondary schools, and they're going to go up as fast as colleges, more than they already have. This is just another, look at the mortgage credit did to home prices. I mean, you can't have the government directing this money into the system.
Nomi, let me guess. You say no to school choice, but yes to the teachers union.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of AFT, the American Federation for Teachers, and I think that they are not earning their respect. The problem here is not the federal amount of money. It's the states. The states where you have the worst performing schools, the municipalities are not receiving their funding at the local level. And shocker, they're communities where there are higher levels of minorities and lower income communities. So who gets the benefit of this? Taxpayers are subsidizing wealthy families who don't want to pay for private schools but now have tax incentives.
Lee, final word.
Well, I have to say this. Donald Trump gave his speech to the joint session this week, and the line of the night was when he said education is the civil rights issue of our times. His lines on choice resonated across the board. Republicans, Democrats, and independents all responded well to it. So I think that speaks a lot.
Yeah, because many teachers aren't earning respect because they haven't earned respect, because our students are failing, and they're failing the American people. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Lee and Nomiki for joining us. Ladies, forget Kim Kardashian's photos breaking the internet. This week, it was a typo breaking a major part of it, how you can profit from the fix. Next.
As President Donald Trump steps up an aggressive agenda, his critics are stepping up the attacks, and now his attorney general is, well, just stepping back. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. And from tax cuts to health care, Charles Payne says that these distractions could be the real killer. Also here, Charlie Gasparino, Jerry Willis, Gary Kaltbaum, and Adam Lushinsky. Ben Stein, I regret to tell you, is off this week. All right, so Charles Payne, you're listening and seeing all of this, and all you can say is whatever you think about these other matters, they're getting in the way of dealing with the matters that matter, right? So
absolutely.
Tax cuts and all the rest.
Absolutely. You know, you start to get that Wall Street rubbernecking.
Right.
Hey, you know, there can't be too many distractions because we've had such a positive response to President Trump that all of the things that he promised his agenda, we need them to come true. They don't have to happen in the first 100 days or any sort of artificial timeline, but we've always got to be confident that they will happen and that this administration can't get too caught up in some of the other things. Some of it's noise, some of it's not, but if they are distracted, then particularly considering that there are enough Republicans against key parts of his agenda that he's got to deal with that. You don't want to get too distracted on other things.
Yeah, so do you think this stuff is getting in the way and pushing it back with...
You know, he's a tenacious fellow, as we know. The President Trump, he pushes forward. He's a little bit like Patton. He wants to, you know, take over. He'll be in Berlin in 3 days if he's not told to step back a little bit. That said, there is a reality to legislation. If you talk to people on the Hill, they will tell you that they don't even have a budget right now. How are you going to do tax cuts, do meaningful tax reform without a budget? Obamacare is a morass. And listen, I don't think that this Sessions thing is a particularly good development. He said one thing on the stand and something else came out. Whether he's lying or not as a whole, I'm not going to get into it. I don't believe he is. But, you know, it's a distraction. But
although it's funny you say on the stand, you mean in a hearing, just to be fair to him, by the way.
Well, it's almost the same. There's almost no difference. He took an oath when he went on both. So, and you're right about that. But he did raise his right hand and say, I will tell the truth.
Well, there's no one charging you. Not everyone charging that he lied.
No, I'm not saying he lied, but I'm saying, well, that's a bad thing. An even worse thing is not having a clear legislative agenda. And I'll tell you, Neil, you and I spoke about this a lot. You know, getting stuck with health care in that morass while not doing the tax cuts was an issue.
You know, you have to wonder whether it was wise in retrospect to push health care first and try to deal with that Herculean task. It's proven to have been that maybe they should have gone with the tax cuts. It's neither here nor there. That didn't happen. But are you worried, and the people you talk to worried, that this is going to get stymied, delayed, you name it?
You know, I think this thing we saw happen this week, as you guys were just talking about, this is the first of many. The Democrats are going to put a lot of roadblocks in front of Obamacare, in front of a tax reform, even if they have nothing to do with those topics, to try to slow down the Republicans, because they don't have the White House, they don't have the House, they don't have the Senate. They've got to find some kind of way to get in between.
Adam, when you see this back and forth on this, the rap is anything that delays the Trump agenda, Democrats are quite happy to see that happen. Do you think that they're pouncing on this stuff, though, simply to get his agenda stalled or stopped?
I don't think they're pouncing on it simply to get his agenda stalled or stopped, but certainly they want to stall and stop his agenda for some very obvious reasons. But I thought I agreed with something that Charles said, which is that some of this, not all of it, but some of this is quite serious. It's quite important. It's not just Democrats who are distracting the president, who is, by the way, Neil, highly distractible. He's capable of distracting himself without any help from anybody.
Well, he's been on good distracting behavior this week, so we'll see. I don't know. But Gary, when you look at this and the markets and all, you know, by and large, with the vagaries notwithstanding, they're still up appreciably since the president's election, since Donald Trump's election, and continue to be very strong. Do you see this obsession about the timing and all justified? Because if you step back and were to see back in November where we'd be now, I think most people would be surprised.
Look, the problem is going forward is that we have an election next year, and every day that goes by that something doesn't get done and there's a distraction, not just on the left but on the right, they're going to start calculating where they're going with this. So I think it's a problem right now. If there's going to be more Jeff Sessions types thing, it's going to take away from getting this done. The good news is Donald Trump, I think, is very, very focused. He was here in Orlando yesterday doing the education thing, and I think think they're, really on schedule for this, but any more distractions will affect the markets. And I think, I do believe, and you've talked about this too, about where the markets are priced for perfection based on the promises that have come out of the White House.
So what happens, guys, if we don't see the tax cuts this year? Extreme case, but it's not an August thing. It's not even a this year thing. Jamie Dimon was one of the first to raise it this week. What do you think?
Well, August comes and goes without it, then it could be a serious issue for the market. But I do think that Steve Mnuchin kind of bought some cover, particularly when he spoke with Maria Bartiromo, in the sense that they keep emphasizing that the impact will be in 2018. So they sort of mitigate the idea that it's got to be retroactive and it must absolutely happen in August. That no matter what, this will have a massive, major economic impact on our economy in 2018.
Well, Wall Street is pretty smart, and they can add and subtract pretty well. And listen, he says the impact will be in 2018 if they get it passed in August. Now, what will the impact be if they get it passed in December? I mean, then it's out further going by his logic. I don't know if I buy his logic.
If they don't get it passed.
If they don't got it. And here's again where it becomes problematic. There is fairly decent Republican support for tax cuts across the board. There's less factions in the Republican Party about cutting taxes and cutting regulations.
Although there are strong factions on the tax, about paying more, watching the deficit. So you don't have a lot of wiggle room there.
If you lay off the infrastructure stuff, purely on taxes, there's a lot of support. Why he went for this Obamacare thing right off the bat is beyond me.
Well, we're told that Speaker Ryan
he said he would in the campaign. That's why.
I think Speaker Ryan was saying, listen, this is the order of events. This is the best way to do it. He might infer to them. I don't know what the truth is. Jerry, the fact is that on the health care thing, and again, a signature achievement he wanted to do, that is this president, that too kind of stymied. But again, maybe it all works out. I guess what I'm asking is, if it is delayed and it's not denied on both these fronts, would that be okay? In other words, would the markets sort of rewrite themselves and say, all right, well, it is happening. It's not as if it's not.
I think the markets are way ahead of themselves here. I think there's problems ahead if we don't get some sign that we're getting clarity on what kind of bill we're going to have. We don't even know what's going to be in Obamacare yet. We're not even clear on that. There are lots of different Obamacare bills out there. Tax reform, where is that? We don't know. It's somewhere behind Obamacare. We need to get some kind of clear signal on these, and soon are you going to see your 401k start going down? And the beauty of what's happened so far year to date is every week you could look at your 401k balance and it was going up, up, up. That's awesome. If that stops, I think that changes sentiment a great deal.
Gary, do you entertain this into your own market, strategy, what might or might not happen in Washington?
Absolutely. Look, since the election, the banks have skyrocketed on the hope that Dodd-Frank's going bye-bye. Corporations, there's infrastructure companies have skyrocketed based on infrastructure and based on lower corporate taxes. It's very simple. If they don't happen, if the market one day wakes up and says, this ain't happening, certain things are going to take a serious haircut, and then the word confidence comes into play. It is a huge intangible when it comes to markets. And if markets lose confidence on anything getting done, watch what happens with a market that's already trading in the trees on a historical basis.
Well, we get paid to be glass half full guys, right? To warn for the worst.
Right.
Let's just say something good comes out of this. They get a decent repeal and replace of Obamacare. By the way, lower taxes right there, right? Because there's taxes embedded in
20
Obamacare.
of them.
Right, 20 of them, you know.
Biggies.
Just to say we get some daylight on tax cuts that, okay, maybe not coming now, but coming in December, where corporate tax rates are going down to 20 or 15%, and
so delayed, not denied.
By the way, that's a pretty damn good fiscal policy.
All right, guys, thank you very, very much. In the meantime, we have a lot of questions here. Eric Bolling is going to try and get some answers from the White House Budget Director, Mick Mulvaney. That is coming up on Cash It In. Up here next, President Trump pushing a new plan for legal immigration that says if you want to come in, you've got to be able to help yourself out. In other words, don't count on the taxpayers here to do it for you.
Today on Forbes on Fox, critics blasting President Trump's plan to boost military spending by more than $50 billion. But some here say that boost is not enough. Plus, some GOP lawmakers not completely happy with the president, calling for tax credits in any plan to replace Obamacare. We'll tell you why they're nervous. We'll see at the top of the hour.
With a Fox News alert, good morning. I'm Leland Vittert in Washington. President Trump making a startling accusation this morning. He says former President Obama wiretapped him during the campaign, but so far has offered no evidence. Mr. Trump tweeted this morning, terrible. Just found out that Obama had my wires tapped in Trump Tower just before the victory. Nothing found. This is McCarthyism. Former Obama aide Ben Rhodes saying no president could order surveillance without a warrant. More on this as it develops. And also, next time you're at the airport, get ready for a little more thorough pat-down. Passengers will reportedly face more comprehensive screenings after an audit apparently showed the TSA wasn't doing its job too well. The new procedures will also apply to airline pilots and flight attendants as well. We'll see if it works. I'm Leland Vittert. Now back to Cavuto on Business.
Switching away from this current system of lower-skilled immigration and instead adopting a merit-based system, we will have so many more benefits. It will save countless dollars, raise workers' wages, and help struggling families, including immigrant families, enter the middle class.
All right, well, it's a pretty simple idea. In fact, this country was founded on it when it came to immigrants arriving on our shores. You want to come here legally, then you better be able to support yourself when you get here legally. It is called merit-based immigration, and either on your own or through family members and friends that you have arriving here, that it's not the government that's going to look after you, that they are, or you are, or both. Gary, this will give taxpayers a break. That's clear. But what we forget is this used to be the norm when it came to those who came to our country.
Yeah, we need to go back to the norm, and we need to go to where Canada is. In Canada, 60% of people are on the merit base, and only about 20% are based on the family. We're the exact opposite. The taxpayer's already getting crushed every way through Sunday. Here's a great way of improving our economy by getting people here that are educated, have work experience, versus putting them on the dole, which is costing the taxpayer tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars every year. I think it's a great idea. You don't have to go all the way, but at least go towards it.
Adam, when I was looking up at, how we used to conduct those who arrived at, Ellis Island in the early 1900s and beyond, that was kind of like the norm. When they checked you, that do you have someone here you're going to be hooking up with and a job and all that. That kind of was the way we did things. And I don't know when exactly we veered away from that, but we have. So what is so onerous about this?
There's nothing objectionable about that system at all, so long as we also have a conversation about humanitarian aid. In other words, refugees who we want to help come here because their lives are horrible. But so I say there's nothing wrong with it, Neil. But we're not addressing the 11 million or so undocumented illegal immigrants who are here now, which is what the president suggested in an off-the-record meeting that he might be interested in, but then didn't say anything about it in the address. That's a very serious issue that he needs to address as well.
I don't think it's our job to take in people whose lives are horrible. I mean, I understand the notion of people escaping persecution, religious persecution, Christians in the Middle East. I
That's
mean, I
all
get
I'm
that.
talking
If
about.
you're talking, okay, but just we
I don't
are
know
not,
what the Christian part has to do with it, but all sorts
no, because
of people
those are the people. Those are most of the people being persecuted in the Middle East. And
people are being persecuted all around the world that we want to help if we can.
Christians are persecuted in the Middle East to a very large number. And what I'm saying, and there's other people that are persecuted in the world. But my bigger point is we should not be the welfare state for the world. And I think
because Europe's already tried that and it
doesn't
didn't work so well.
It doesn't work, and it's causing tremendous social upheaval. And here's the bottom line. Immigration policy was always to benefit the host country. We let in poor people from Italy, Ireland, you name it, in the past, so they can work in factories and when we had those types of jobs. To just flood us right now with cheap labor is absurd. You can't have open borders, and we do have a welfare state.
There's no shame in being selective, in my view. Lots of countries do it. Canada does it. They go one step further. It's not just can you support your family, is that can you support a business? Do you have $1 million in your pocket that you can put to work as an entrepreneur? That is a great idea. Australia does the same thing.
Well, not everyone has $1 million in their pocket.
But wouldn't that be a great thing to make sure these people came into this country?
We actually do have a program like that in America, too. The big money, if you bring big money. Here's the interesting thing with Canada's thing. It's a 100-point system. That's the system. You get 28 points, the max score for language. If you know how to speak the damn language, good. Okay? 28 points, 25 points for education, 15 points for work experience, 12 points for your age. They like them a little younger. 10 points if you have a current job offer, and 10 points for adaptability. Are you able to assimilate? That to me is a perfect way of doing it. I think they've got it right. And I think
but do we have any carve-outs for those leaving and fleeing persecution, regardless of whether Christian, Muslim?
This would be separate from what Adam and Charlie were talking about. We're just talking about regular immigrants coming into the country. But this is a 100-point system, and it seems like it makes a lot of sense to me.
When Jimmy Carter stopped immigration from Iran during the crisis, I mean, there was a carve-out for humanitarian, for people that are escaping the persecution. Right. There always will be, but the notion that we have to be a welfare state for the world, as if this country's been probably post-1965, if you look at the immigration laws, is insane. And it's bankrupting
Well, the Western world has been that way, and it's backfired.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here. In a snap, the co-founders of Snapchat becoming instant billionaires. But is this app worth all of the incredible